For total realism, instruct any player who had to use this rule that he cannot go out for pizza with the rest of the group, but must go home and read 20 pages of a dictionary, starting with a randomly determined letter. That should simulate the time spent recouping in the hospital rather nicely. Hello, and welcome to System Mastery, the podcast where we beat a dead horse 1d6 damage at a time. This week, John and I boldly go where no man has gamed before. Or at least where they shouldn't. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. Today we review Prime Directive, the Starfleet universe role-playing game. And it's a huge, steaming turd. Okay, so how do you feel about this game, John?
I'm kind of offended that it exists, honestly.
This game is real bad. This is okay. Okay, let's start with the history instead of just saying how bad it is. That's not good listening. This is the Starfleet universe role-playing game. It came out in 1993 under the Task Force Games banner. And I should let you know that this game, despite being awful, and despite being an awful universe it's set in, and just being stupid, also came out as a GURPS game and as a D20 game.
Now, when we say that this is an awful game, and that the setting and universe for this game is awful, you need to understand, it is the Starfleet universe. Going through this game, you will literally never see it say Star Trek.
Nope, no Kirk, no Nimoy, no Enterprise, although the Enterprise does show up in a list of ships at one point. But it can't be a game about the Enterprise because that's not the license they have.
Yeah, it is based off of the Starfleet universe, which is its own thing. It's sort of an odd fanfic spin-off of Star Trek.
This universe came into existence during a doldrum period for Star Trek. It was while they were still planning to bring into existence what they were calling Star Trek Phase 2, which there were a couple of pilot scripts written for and so on, eventually became one of the movies and the animated series, a few other things. This book came out, however, in 1993. And by 1993, they were on Season 7 of The Next Generation, they were on Season 1 of Deep Space Nine, and every movie featuring the original cast of Star Trek had already come and gone.
This, however, has no bearing on the setting.
Nothing at all, except for a couple of snide remarks about how their Klingons don't have stupid head ridges.
Yeah, this fucking game.
Okay, alright, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go through the description of what Starfleet Universe is, and I'm not just gonna stop and say that the game is stupid. But it is. Okay, so, in the late 70s, they purchased, some company, probably Task Force Games, purchased the license to what they call the Starfleet universe. They did so they could make a couple of board games and a tactical war game, like a Warhammer 40k or something like that, called Starfleet Battles.
Now you have to understand, at this point in the Star Trek universe, it had just gone off the air, and Star Trek didn't really, when it first ran, have this huge fan base that it has now. I mean, they didn't even really have a good closing episode. It was just a standard episode, and then they were done.
Oh, yeah. And this universe was purchased. Now, the game, as we mentioned before, came out in 93, but the universe that this game is set in was purchased and began after Star Trek went off the air. TOS, the original series, went off the air. So, this universe was purchased at a point before the first movie had come out. The animated series was in existence, and that was about it. So this is set with some of the elements from the animated series and the original series as well, the original show. So that's all that they have. Now, as Star Trek as a license has expanded and incorporated more films, The Next Generation, your Deep Space Nine, your Enterprise, all this other crap, this game has stayed the same. And they've branched off into different universes. This game, when I first picked it up and flipped through it, I felt like a big Star Trek virgin idiot. Now, normally I consider myself a moderate Trekkie. I don't memorize the show titles, but I know a lot about the episodes, I know all the characters from them, and so on. So when I flipped this book open and I saw Rigelians and Signans and so on, I was like, what the hell is this? This There's so many races. How come I don't recognize these? It's because after they purchased the license, they just started making stuff up. They're their own universe.
Yeah, this is basically someone took the Star Trek license and went, okay, well, I like that, but here's what I'd do. And then just went full fanfic, Mary Sue, I decided I know what's best for this, and is almost angry, it seems, at the expanded information that has come out for it. They have their own alliances between people, they made up races, they made up different ways for people to interact that had nothing to do with the original series, which is where your main party actually is a prime team, which is basically, I guess, Starfleet versions of Navy SEALs?
Yeah, little teams of 4 people who all have a special skill. When I first read through this book, I thought that they were really trying to make Aliens the Star Trek game, because it's like you're playing as a little team where you've got a heavy weapons guy, and a melee fighter guy, and a leader. It's very unusual. Now, a second ago I mentioned Rigelians and Signans. When you create characters in this universe, you choose your Federation races, and I'm going to list off the Federation races as best as I can from memory now. Humans, Vulcans, and Andorians. We remember those because they were in various series. After that, Signans, Alpha Centaurians, Rigelians, and I want to say Andromedans. Now, if those all sound like just the names of stars you've heard of, that's because they are. They didn't go all fanciful with their race creation until they got into their Klingon Empire. The human races are just nearby stars. Now, if you're a real obsessive Star Trek nerd, you'll probably think Rigelians. I think they got introduced as generic, boring green guys in Deep Space Nine. And I think Signans were a race that was supposed to be in the first Star Trek movie, but ended up not being. And you'd be right. But they would not have looked like the weird things in this game.
Yeah, and the races are also very,
they're just humans.
No, it's very original Trek in that every alien race is just a human in some other extreme fashion. So,
and it's not even like, it's even more original series, because by humans in some extreme fashion, I don't mean they have forehead ridges or, a little spoon on their face or whatever. They've got nothing. Alpha Centaurians are just more women than men.
Oh, it's just Amazons.
Yeah, they're just Amazons of space.
Yeah.
Signans just have dark eyes. Oh, and they're undisciplined. And Rigelians are literally just Maori, except their face tattoos glow.
Yeah, you are playing just big dudes with tattoos all over you. That's
glow.
it.
Also, just so we get this out there, I'm going to post a picture of it in the website. But the cover of this book.
Oh my God, the art in this book, but specifically the cover.
It's Tech War versus the Toltec Lizard Angel.
There is a Prime Team biker gang in all red leather jackets with weird phaser pistols, not like the phasers you normally see, but like guns, shooting at a lizard with angel bug-winged Toltec spear-wielding weirdo.
It's very unusual to look at this insane picture and then think to yourself, yeah, Prime Directive.
Yeah, this reminds me of Star Trek in any way.
Yeah. Or, for example, the name of the book, which refers, and let's make myself sound like a huge nerd here, the Prime Directive is, don't fuck with non-warp civilization. Let's just leave them alone and let them develop warp in their own time.
And it even has, in the book, writes out, this is what the Prime Directive is, and this is what you need to be, upholding. And the book is, we are shooting pre-tech flying lizard men with our laser beams.
Yeah, and they're going to try and kill us with their rainbow spears. So, the cover is insane. The book is insane.
I think I'm insane for having read it.
The universe is totally insane. So, just to boil it down to a sentence, at one point, Starfleet Battles became a game that split off from Star Trek. It then branched and grew on its own, independent of the Star Trek universe. So this is not a Star Trek game, it's a Starfleet game. Okay, so, character creation.
There was a lot of layers if I'm going to be generous in describing it, is a very layered system.
It's pithy. It's very pithy. There's 10 stats, and they include things like discipline.
I'll give it this. Outside being a human, or a little bit for the Alpha Centaurans, you just have stats.
Mm-hmm.
When you decide, like, I'm going to be a Vulcan, it gives you a stat spread. That is your stat spread. There's no point buy, there's no rolling, it's just, these are your numbers. You can spend your character creation points later on to raise up different stats, but straight out of the gate, these are your numbers, go.
Yeah. This book feels like it was written by, and I don't know if we've mentioned this term in the podcast before, but it feels like a outgrowth and full product created by grognards. The French word for grumbler, it describes the type of nerd who is obsessed with the way things work. So, your Vulcan in this game is better goddamn be a Vulcan if he's going to be anything. So, he gets a 1 in his intuition score, and it costs him double to raise his intuition because he started with a 1 and they're meant to be unintuitive. It also costs him twice as much to purchase any skill that uses intuition as a skill. So your Spock has to be Spocky, although he's not allowed to be Spock.
Yeah, and you start with a 6 in your logic because, by God, you will be logical.
Mm-hmm. So, and again, let's just stick to that concept. This book feels like it was written by grognards, or grogs, you can call them for short. The reason it feels that way is because it's got a bunch of dumb rules and a bunch of unnecessarily strict rules. So, you build your character with 10 stats. They're basically just a spread. Then you get your I-CIP, which I think stands for Initial Character Improvement Points, I want to say.
Maybe?
It's I-CIP, and then you get a bunch of those, and you spend them on improving your stats. My personal favorite of the new stats, which is buying the range that you were available to shoot at.
Now, before you really get into that, though, let me also say, you have a very odd class system in this. And you have a lot of choices to make for things. So, the first choice you're going to have to make is your character a Marine, or are they naval?
Yeah.
Now, this means fuck all. The only thing that being naval or Marine means is, am I going to call you a general or an admiral?
Right, and then you do get to randomly roll your rank, or choose your rank, but there's a very specific window of ranks that a prime team is made up of. It don't think that stops the book from listing every rank ever in it as well, and then clearly demarcating the ones you're allowed to touch.
Now, after you choose naval or Marine, you're then going to pick from the different sort of types of character you can be.
Careers.
You can be a command, you can be medic.
Yeah, science.
Heavy weapons, engineering, and then the melee fighter guy.
And these give you a starting skill package, and then they also, let me just go ahead and say, they are very confusing, because, for example, there's a heavy weapons Marine and a heavy weapons Navy, and they have slight differences of skills that they get at the outset. And it's hard to even tell which parts of this page is what.
And, okay, after you've picked naval or Marine, and after you've picked, are you, a heavy weapons guy or a command guy, okay, now we're gonna move on. Now, subset of command or heavy weapons, let's just go command. Alright, I pick command. Now you have to choose what type of command you are.
Are you a bridge commander? Are you a field commander?
And so on and so on. Now, again, all of these are they're just bonuses.
Yeah,
so you pick command,
packages.
it gives you +1 to leadership.
Yeah.
Just right off the bat. However, the weird thing for this is every one of these character types requires at least a 6
in given stat.
In that stat.
Yeah.
So you have to, when character creation is over, if you picked command, have to have a leadership of 6 or higher, but because you spend points afterwards, you could have a guy that has a leadership of 3, gets command, and then you have to make sure you remember by the time your character is done to lift it up to 6.
Right, which you're going to be using those ICIPs for later on. You have to use those to buy your stat up to 6, or play as a race that has a 6 in the relevant stat. It's annoying. And you know what? I'm not even sure if it would be less annoying. I know we're making this sound awful, like, oh no, not a commander/bridge commander, but and to me, I feel like when I say that, I think of, Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I'm a fighter, but I'm a great weapon fighter. Because that kind of, it's that same sort of drilling down.
That specialization.
Yeah, the difference is that this is a steaming pile of shit. That's the core.
Well, the main issue I have is, as we've sort of been hinting at, there are a lot of options. I mean, a lot. And each time you drill down farther into it, you think, okay, I picked fighter, I'll be a great weapon fighter. And then at that point, you just sort of have some skills. But this keeps going. Like you mentioned rank. Also, one of the worst things in this is everyone has to have a clear rank order in your party.
Yeah, you have to report to a guy above you in the party.
Yeah, so whoever got to command first and decided, I'm going to be the command role. Well, congratulations. Not only did you get this certain skill package, but you're now in charge of the group. You just, by default, are the ranking officer.
Mm-hmm.
And not only is this horrible for RP, as far as, okay, we want to do this, but Jim, the ranking officer, says, no, I'm the ranking officer and we'll do what I say, but it also means he gets more skill points.
Mm-hmm.
The higher your rank is, the more points you get, which means if you decide, I want to be heavy weapons guy, that sounds awesome, I'm going to have like a giant laser cannon, I'm going to be a badass. Well, yes, but you started a really low rank, so how about fuck you?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely true. So, once you've got your character built, you've got a rank, you have two kinds of reputation. There's heroic reputation, which describes your penchant for daring do, and there's your professional reputation, which is sort of your capacity for rank advancement, the degree to which you are considered to be competent at your job. Each one of these is informed by the rank your character has, the class your character has, and the race your character has. And you can use them to buy your way out of dangerous situations and so on. You can spend reputation points to kind of pull rank on people, or to get out of sticky situations by being someone that an enemy has heard of. Okay.
So, we haven't even gotten more than 20 pages into this book at this point.
That's okay.
And in addition to being just horrible right from the outset, it has a layout of so many tables and lists. And now I understand in the Heroes Unlimited podcast, you may have heard us go on about how we love random tables.
These aren't random.
Just love them. But these are just tables. It's just lists.
Just dense information being delivered ad nauseum. Okay, skills. Like we said earlier, skill packages are primarily informed by your choice of class. You get a set of skills and things like weapon fire, heavy weapons. You can purchase range, like I mentioned earlier. Your character starts with the ability to shoot at short range. It costs you a ton of your initial character points to be able to shoot at medium range, and it is almost impossible to start out as a sniper. But that is one of the options. If you have phasers, you have to purchase the ability to shoot farther than most people.
Now, the problem with that is you cannot raise this ever again outside of character creation. If you decide, okay, you know what? I'm okay. I'm pretty good with the phaser. I can hit a guy at a decent ways away from me, you know. I mean, they're not right next to me. That's fine. No, that's great. I'm sure if I put in the time, I can get better at that. No, you can't. Okay. If you aren't born a sniper, then by God, you will never learn how to be one.
Right. Okay, you get a bunch of these skills. They give you some secondary skills as well. You have to choose a set of skills that your character has as personal interests that are not allowed to be things that would be useful. They stress heavily, if you're a heavy weapons guy, don't take a minor interest in pistols, because that wouldn't make any sense. No guy who's interested in big guns would also be interested in small guns. Take fly fishing instead.
No, this at least has some basis in the show. You always have shit like, you know, Data's writing poetry for his cat.
It's true.
Or, Worf is interested in Klingon opera. Whatever it happens to be, some non-plot, non-combat related thing that, like, I like to paint, or I'm interested in
archaeology,
20th century naval tradition.
Yeah, it's always 20th century. Oh my fucking God. Okay, this book does not disabuse the one dumb thing I always hated the most about Star Trek, which is that apparently there's a 200-year gap in culture development between the show and the real world, such that everyone is obsessed with, like, Babe Ruth and Marilyn Monroe and not their 21st and 22nd century equivalents.
Yeah.
So same thing in this game. Your character is a whitewater rafter or a casting fly fisherman instead of, enjoying zero-G ball or whatever the hell gets introduced next 50 years from now. It makes sense as a television convention because you can't have your character being obsessed with something that no one's ever heard of. But this game would have been the perfect opportunity for them to say, oh, my character particularly enjoys purple carrot farming or whatever fuck sci-fi thing you want. And they didn't take that chance.
Now, in the skills, not only do you have this selection of skills that do nothing outside of just, it's essentially RP, but you are forced to take skill points in it. So you might fail at your RP interest. But we also have the interesting thing where this game has over 80 different skills, and this does not include skills that can be of different things in the same skill, like, say, driving a car is different than having skill in driving a boat or driving a plane. So you could have somewhere between probably up to 100, I would say, skills that you could see in this game.
Yeah, and that's what that you could see in this book. That doesn't even describe one. Remember we were talking a second ago about secondary skills, like fly fishing is listed as the example in the book. It's not in the book. The reason that fly fishing is in there is because when you're creating your secondary skills, you're supposed to make them up. So it's to say, my character really enjoys ice sculpture. And so he has an 8 in ice sculpture, if that happens to come up. And I will point out, by the way, that Sulu was a fencer. So there's at least one example of a character learning a combat skill as a hobby. But anyway, going back to the point. Once you've got your skills, you get a value in them. The value usually, like a 4 to a 7 or so. This informs the number of dice you roll. It's all D6s. You roll D6s for how many dice you have in your skill in an attempt to accomplish a task.
Now, this is at least one of the only non-awful things in this game.
You actually like the tricodes?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just
we'll
dice.
come to that. Just dice.
The fact that it's fully D6 based, and you are rolling D6s based on number of D6s on your skill and attribute. Okay. No, that is definitely a game mechanic that you can have.
It's even got exploding 6s.
I don't hate the idea of it immediately. However,
yeah, exploding 6s, by the way, if you're not a regular role-playing gamer, exploding 6s means that if you roll a 6, you get to keep that 6, roll another D6, and add the result of that. Enabling someone who's got a skill of 1 in something to perhaps succeed at something with a difficulty of 7 just by having a miraculously lucky turn. You can easily have a skill of 1 or 2 of something in this game because the way that you determine what your skill rank in something is you take the relevant attribute, say for example, logic / playing chess as a skill set. You take your logic score of 6 because you're a Vulcan, and your playing chess score of 4 because you're really good at it. Add those together and average them.
Yay.
That's how you get your skill value, which means it takes you at least 2 rank increases in anything to get 1 more die out of it, because that's how averages work. And so you have an average score of 5. You get to roll 5 dice on your check.
Yeah. And this, the Vulcan playing chess that's really good at chess, you might think, okay, well, 5 dice to try and get something, that's not bad. However, the Vulcan is Logic 6, and probably one of the high-end stats that you'll have when you're done making your character will be 7 or 8, maybe, if that's like what you're focusing on.
Yeah. You'll have 1 7, you'll have a bunch of 3s and 4s. Average humans have 2s. That's the rule for the game. Average Starfleet guys have 3s. Yeah. No, that's average Starfleet guys. Sorry, we're podcasting visually here. Average Starfleet guys have a stat of 3. Average humans have a stat of 2. It's kind of like Space Marines.
Yeah.
That Starfleet guys are just better. It's always been that way in the Star Trek universe. The Starfleet universe. The sense that
if you got into Starfleet, it's because you're great.
Or I think it's because they make you great. I've always thought that was kind of like a Starship Troopers thing.
What, that they don't want to live forever?
Yeah,
or,
service guarantees citizenship. I don't know, whatever.
They shower naked.
You get in there and you become, in co-ed. Everyone showers naked. What are you saying, you don't shower naked?
No, I'm a never nude. I'm sorry.
How did I not know? I mean, you're not wearing pants right now. You're just saying you always wear a shirt? We're goofing off because this game sucks and we don't want to talk about it. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about tricodes.
Oh, okay.
All right, so this is, when I first saw the word, I was like, oh, look at that. It's a Star Trek reference. That's a cute idea. Because, you know, those little magic gizmos that Bones and so on were always carrying around that they could use to tell you anything about anything are called tricorders. Because they record 3 things.
So your skills are a tricode. And you'll have 3 numbers. The 3 numbers, the first one has to be above 0. You need at least a 1 in the first. And every number after that has to be higher than the one before it. So you have to have, 1, 2, 3.
It actually always has to be separated by 2. So it's 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6.
Nope.
No, really?
It's
okay.
you only need to be higher than.
Okay.
But you also can't, so you couldn't have something like 1, 3, 3. You couldn't have, 2, 5, 3, anything like that.
Right. Which one makes sense?
Yeah, because what these represent are how well you succeeded. So you roll on something, and trying to hit the first number means you barely succeed. Hitting the second is you succeed moderately well, and if you hit the last number, you completely succeed.
Yeah. Now, to me, these feel like they're kind of too easy most of the time. There's a lot of penalties that can be applied that are going to make them harder. But to give you an example, our chess-playing Vulcan has a score of 5 dice. So you roll 5d6 and compare that against your tricode score of your ability to play chess. Let's say that chess uses the same difficulty as combat actions. So 4, 6, 8. So you roll 5 dice where the average result is what? Probably 14 plus 17, and compare it against a 4, 6, 8.
Except you're not adding the dice together.
Oh, what are you doing?
You didn't actually read this book.
I read the book. I just
No. What you're doing is you're looking to beat whatever those numbers are on 1 die. Any given singular die. So, if you have an 8 as your complete success, you have to roll a 6.
And then get at least a 2.
And then get at least a 3. Because on your exploding, you're minus 1. No, this game can eat my dick.
I missed that part. The book is super dense. I tried my best.
Now, the other problem I have with this is, okay, you might think, okay, there are scales of success. That's always more interesting than just a binary pass-fail. When you have that, I roll for it, and either, no, I can't unlock this door, or yes, I can, having something like, oh, well, you unlock it, but it makes noise, or something like that.
Right, there's also a full botch example in this. If you get no success at all, then something bad happens. Which means there's a chance on every roll ever for something bad to happen.
Yeah. If you're rolling for something, the book, however, shows that the partial success, you got the first number in the tricode. Congratulations. It is essentially a failure without anything bad happening to you.
Yeah.
Partial success is, what were you trying to do? I was trying to bribe a guard. Okay, you got a partial success. The bribe doesn't work. He doesn't like you, but he doesn't immediately arrest you.
Yeah, he's still talking to you is basically what you get off that. You basically need a complete success for anything to happen in this game.
Yeah, even the moderate success with that bribe example would still be, he seems like he might be open to it, but still doesn't take the bribe.
So every effect in the game is based around tricode attempts. If you want to hit a guy with a gun, you roll against your combat tricode, which is thankfully universal. It's 4, 6, 8. Every combat action in the game is 4, 6, 8. That means you have a 4, 6, 8 tricode chance to hit a guy, to dodge that guy trying to hit you, to shoot a guy, to drop a bomb on a guy. It's all 4, 6, 8.
Yeah.
Now there are a ton of modifiers to that.
There are I think actual 4 full pages of modifier listings to what might change trying to hit a guy. And these, I think, are almost entirely negatives.
Oh yeah, almost entirely. I think there's one for like aiming, and then after that it's all just, oh, are you wearing any amount of armor? Does he have any kind of elevation advantage over you? And just pages and pages of stuff like that that make it harder and harder to hit someone. Which, let's be fair, is a good thing, because this game is lethal.
It is another one of those games where your hit points are almost non-factored.
Yeah, you might as well be binary. Did he hit you? You're probably dead or unconscious.
Yeah, I mean, if you happened to be... Okay, for this mission, you are going down to some planet. You know that there's going to be combat. You ask your officer, your main bridge commander guy, your DM essentially, can I have heavy armor? For the love of God, I don't want to die.
Oh, let's really briefly here. In this game, we always talk about the DM and what they're called in the game. In this game, it's a briefing officer. The DM is an actual person. They actually play an NPC.
You are the literal briefing officer on the ship.
Yeah, which means that the DM is reporting to the captain of the ship. That's how unimportant you are.
You aren't even important enough to be in charge of anything as the DM, let alone a player.
That's who you're playing. You're playing the guys who take orders from the guy who takes orders from the guy. Also you earn credits, which, come on, is this actually Starfleet or not? I mean, whatever. Anyway, you were saying you ask your briefing officer for heavy armor.
Yes, and so anything that you take with you on any given away mission or prime mission is basically up to your DM whether he wants to be nice to you or not. Your equipment list isn't even really something you take from session to session. You just requisition things. What am I going to need for this mission?
Right, and it's fun because there are actually roles you can use to attempt to sway the briefing officer. You can try and be like, well, I'm going to roll requisitions, or I'm going to try and pull rank on the briefing officer in an attempt to either get heavy armor or a special weapon, or to get paid extra.
Yeah, and I think this is, bar none, my favorite role that you can do in the game is, after you've done a mission, if you fucked up, you can roll to try to convince your briefing officer that you didn't fuck up as badly as you did.
Right, because he's just a guy. He hasn't been sitting there with you the whole time, watching as you try to kill the lizard bird.
And it's not even, okay, your DM goes, oh yeah, you guys, you kind of messed that mission up. Like, the ambassador was injured when he was supposed to be unharmed. And instead of going, well yeah, but we accomplished this and that, and we strengthened relations, you have to say that, and then roll your tri-code for convincing your DM that you aren't a fuck-up.
Yeah, you have to bullshit your way into not just getting fired at the end of each mission. It's interesting. It's
definitely something I haven't seen in any other game.
Okay, so back to the armor thing. Let's say you actually get your DM to let you have some heavy armor, and then you go down to the planet and you encounter a Klingon, and the Klingon's got his Klingon phaser or whatever disruptor, and he shoots you. Okay, did he hit? Are you wearing heavy armor? Is it energy heavy armor?
Why, yes it is. I assume I'm going to be shot by lasers, so I have protection against that.
No, disruptors are physical damage. You're just dead.
What? Fucking...
Oh, no, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Let's check it. Let's check against your life total. You took 7 wounds worth of damage, which means you have a 7 penalty on your next tri-code. Until you get healed by surgery, because you can't just get healed by healing or anything. It's gotta be surgery.
And... I sure hope that you like random, stupid, bullshit busy work, because while you're in the infirmary, getting all healed up because some Klingon shot you, you're just gonna be sitting around, writing your fucking name in a notebook 50,000 times, or reading from the dictionary, or doing some other goddamned dumb, asinine thing.
This podcast opened with a cold read of me saying a thing about how, for maximum effect, you should tell the player to go home and read from a randomly selected letter of the dictionary for 20 pages while you go out for pizza. By the way, Pizza Watch, success. This book does mention DM's Pizza. There it is.
This has been Pizza Watch with Jeff.
Okay, so that's a new feature we're doing. I love that every role-playing game ever mentions DMs and pizza and interactions with DM pizza, and I just want to point them out until we find a book that doesn't. We didn't mention it last week, but just so you know, Tales from the Floating Vagabond does in fact mention Dungeon Master Pizza. Okay, we open with a cold read. That read is for if a character gets knocked unconscious and should have died. They are allowed to expend a number of their character points or whatever to not die. Just to not die. And it's supposed to be a heroic kind of survival, that they cling to life tenaciously. So your character's a hero. Awesome. That's cool. Character's a hero.
I'm not just a red shirt. Yay.
That's amazing. Oh, no, you should get punished for that, though. That's what the book is telling you. And it tells you to do it by having the DM, the briefing officer, make your friend who you're playing your role-playing game with go home instead of going to a restaurant, with the assumption that when he gets home, he will keep following your orders, open a dictionary to a randomly selected letter. I guess you roll a d26 and read 20 pages because you told him to. What the fuck is going on?
Okay. This game is awful. Now, combat, in addition to being straightforward as far as the tricode, that 468. Okay. No, that seems great. At least when you've got a clusterfuck of skills and other things. As long as your combat is fairly straightforward, hey, you can work with that. Even with the penalties, at least it's always working off the same numbers. Now, trying to hit someone also means they are trying to dodge, or parry, or what have you, which means they have a tricode. Now, they're gonna get successes on their tricode. They're gonna compare their successes on that, which will either drop yours from complete to a partial, or a failure, or maybe they botched their dodge and it bumps what you hit them with up to another tricode, and your tricode damage is based on how well you hit on your hit tricode, and I hate the word tricode. Can I stop saying tricode now?
Yeah, it's okay. Stop saying tricode. Look, this game, I wouldn't recommend it to my worst enemy. Okay, I really want to drill down. We're hitting around the 40-minute mark here. I really want to drill down and talk about that whole thing where your briefing officer sends you home to do homework. I want to talk about that because I've seen that in a couple of role-playing games. It's not common, and it's getting less common. It's amazing that I found this in a game from 1993. Now, normally, this is the sort of thing you found in the 80s and so on, back when people still thought that the games actually had the power to cast real spells.
Well, it's also one of those things back where it was very much the adversarial DM who is considered to be the god of this game, and he is trying his damnedest to wreck your fun.
This was a thing in the 80s, back when the DM was still like, okay, I want to be the DM. I really do, so I can peer at you from over my little board thing and roll dice and not let you see the results and say things like the darkness looms. Oh wait, hang on, let me roll for that. It looms menacingly. That's what it is. It's this concept that the DM... I mean, nowadays the DM is basically the person who says, I don't want to be the DM last.
Yeah. The DM is that, or either someone who's like, I have a really cool story idea.
Yeah. And that's good. That's the good way to become a DM.
That's what you want to have a DM.
Do you have a fun story to tell? That's great. Do you hunger for player blood? Then you should probably play some 80s game, or this one, which somehow survived. This game basically encourages the DM to fuck with you. And this is something we used to see a lot of in old role-playing games, and it's the worst thing, because it makes the players hate the DM, it makes the DM hate the players, it turns the game into an elaborate game of Mother May I for no goddamned good reason.
No, it turns into, I mean, at best, Mother May I, and at worst, just a prick-waving fight of who's got the better way of controlling what your PCs do.
So let's talk about DM as God a little bit, because that's what this book is saying. I mean, this game goes further than any game I've ever seen. The fact that you can send your player home with homework and go out for pizza, and presumably it's 1993, so you can't text him, but maybe you'll stop by a payphone and give him a call and say, pizza! How's the letter Q treating you there, noob? Hey, your character died. You can't have pizza.
And it's really amusing to me as well, because for a game that has probably the strongest inclination to have that DM as absolute authority and God, it is also the one that makes the DM not even the most important person on your ship.
Seriously, can you name the briefing officer from any Enterprise?
No.
No, because he's some fucking guy. He probably gets sucked out of the ship when the hull gets breached. You never hear about him, and yet here he is as the DM. Anyway, this goes back to a D&D thing as well. The DM as God is what pops up when you have spells like Speak with Dead and Wish. It describes when the DM says, all right, instead of playing a game where we're playing adventurers, now we're playing a game where we're playing with syntax law. Where it's like, okay, I would like to ask the zombie if he knows a way to the entrance to the next dungeon level. He smugly says yes.
It's things like that. The whole like prophecy spells, anything like that, where you're like, okay, this is gonna give me some advantage. I get to ask a question, or I get to have an effect happen, but I have to describe it. Oh, well, this just means that the DM is encouraged to be a dick to you.
Wish is the ultimate example of this. It's the original template of how to be a dick to your players. You wish, even if you try and keep it relatively simple and not even go overboard with what the wish is actually supposed to do.
I just want 1,000 gold?
Oh, okay, well, you become 1,000 years old and made of gold.
Ugh.
I wish for a building. A man named Building appears.
Hate everyone.
And it turned, I had a friend, we actually have a mutual friend, our buddy Chuck, loved this sort of thing. He loved the syntax of Dungeons and Dragons, wish spells, and so on. And I remember him bragging to me that he used to, before using his Ring of Wishes, present his DM with what basically boiled down to contract law. He'd give him a 20-page document that would say, I wish for the following effects to occur, and when I say the following effects, I want to make sure that you know that I don't mean these effects, I don't mean these effects, I want the following thing to happen.
If you look at subsection B/3, you will see that when I wished for this, it clearly states, just horrible legalese bullshit.
And, the funny thing was, he was telling me this with an absolute point of pride, and I like Chuck, let's be clear, I don't think he listens to these, but I like Chuck, he's a great guy. He's right to enjoy it because the books recommended that you enjoy it, but that shit sucks.
Well, it's still the adversarial DM thing. It's just, now you're being adversarial and that you're like, did you want to try and fuck with me? Well, read 20 pages of bullshit. And that's what you had to do in order to get the simplest of effects off. What did you want? A +5 longsword? Okay, well, if you wish for that, you had better make it so that it is more of a pain in the ass to your DM to read through something than it is to just give you a goddamn longsword.
I give you a longsword that's 5 inches longer than most.
Ugh. No, it's just awful.
Yeah, it's the worst. So, that's the whole concept of the DM as God, which this game really wants you to do. This game is old school.
The game is just, all of its functions, all of its ideas about how you play, about what type of play is good. It's so archaic in what it presents that it, like, for something that came out in the 90s, I can't even understand how this existed.
I should have done some additional research before we got into this to determine what the state of the regular gaming universe was like in 1993. I feel like we were at the tail end of 2nd edition for 1993. My understanding is that 3rd edition dropped around 1995, 1996, in that area. So we were probably talking 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons, like Skills and Powers book, the Book of 9 Swords, all that stuff that was basically introducing player options, giving people more abilities to do things. 1993 would have also been when Rifts was hitting. It came out a little bit before that, but that would have been around the point where it was 1993. Excuse me.
Yeah,
would have been about the point where it was dropping. So
now let me just say, if you have a game where your system is worse than Palladium, you have a serious problem.
We were joking about this before we recorded the podcast, and one of my favorite thoughts was that this book encourages you to send your players home to read a randomly selected letter of the dictionary. I was saying, well, at least it's not Palladium, because in Palladium it would have given you the table.
Yeah, it would have been, read a random letter from the alphabet, here is your random alphabet table.
Yeah, this didn't do that. It assumes you'll just pick the cruelest letter. Okay, so after you get past character creation and how skills and combat work, it gets into telling you a little bit more about the Starfleet universe. And it's stupid. So, okay, let's assume, hey, Podcat, let's assume that you're allowed to create the Star Trek universe however you want to. Is your first inclination to add 2 more lizard races and 2 more cat races to bring the totals to 3 each? Because this book does.
Yeah, I wasn't really completely fulfilled with only having the Gorn, so I had better add in several more lizard dudes that are just the Gorn in a varying shade.
And I love that they went through all of what the animated series had to offer. Like, everything that was in the animated series. That cool 3-armed dude that was working as a ship's ensign on the Enterprise. All that stuff that was written by sci-fi authors that came on board to write, like, one story that were really neat. And what did they pick to put into their game from the animated universe? Cat people.
And then they were like, well, we've got cat people, but what we really need are also lynx people and, like, jaguar people.
And we need at least 2 of those races to be hanging out together in a universe that they call the WYN Confederacy.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah. So, out of this book, you've got... I went through at one point, and I looked up which races are actually from Star Trek and which races are not. Now, there are about 7 or 8 races in the game that are legitimately from Star Trek. Romulans, Vulcans, Andorians, humans, Tholians. Tholians were in one episode. Sorry, what?
Klingons.
Klingons, of course. Kzinti, which is the cat people race from the animated series.
Although, I don't know if we want to say animated series is canon.
You know what? That's actually something that the Star Trek universe treats as canon. Is like the actual Star Trek, not as opposed to Starfleet universe. Star Trek considers the animated series to be a canon thing. The Kzinti are a real part of Star Trek. They're like cat people. So, fine. Great. Welcome aboard. So that gives you 7. Now you go ahead and let's start adding other races from other things. In addition to all the human ones, which are just nearby stars populated by white or near-white people in varying degrees of gender, you also get, Zulis, which are people with a spare set of eyes above their head that can see in the dark. Dunkar, which look like, kind of like a combination of an otter and a walrus, but still human, by the way. The funniest thing to me about this book is that they could go crazy. Rivs goes crazy. With your Palladium races, you go crazy. You go, oh, this guy's got 4 legs. This guy's a psychic worm. You don't do this guy's got some weird face. This book does that. This book gives everyone a weird face.
Which, again, is in the spirit of Trek.
Sure. But then they go outside of the spirit of Trek for a couple of races. They have, in addition to the Gorn, which we remember from Star Trek as being a guy in a bad lizard mask, they add 2 more lizard races, which are dragony here. They are more like dragons. They have long tongues. They have the frilly head ridges. They're basically dragons, because Lord knows if you're adding more cat people, you got to add more dragon people too. This book seems to have presaged Tumblr by a decade or so.
Ah, yes. They just were way ahead of the times on adding in support for furries and other kin.
Yeah, that's really what you're seeing here. They add a race called the Celtorian, which are bugs.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so you got bugs, and then they get the Haydn. The Haydn are animate fire hydrants, kind of. They're like little stumpy dudes. They look a lot like the aliens from Toy Story. The little green 3-eyed dudes.
Well, they're the ones that are trinary.
Yeah, they're trinary. And they're trinary in every way. Like
3 arms, 3 legs, 3 eyes, 3 sexes.
3 genders. When they have kids, they're always triplets.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because it's like, oh, well, imagine a whole planet of 3s. I understand that. It's kind of a Star Wars-y thing. Star Wars always like whole ice planet, whole desert planet, whole forest planet. This is a whole race of 3s. It'd be like if humans were like, well, how do you describe a human? Well, I got 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 teeth. They always have twins. They get 2 brains.
Yeah.
Most of them have 2 jobs.
Not in this economy. Thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama. Oh, President Obama. So, that's what the Haydns are. Let's start bringing this around. This might not make it to a full hour, but you know what? Fuck this game. If I could just say, John, what are your favorite and least favorite aspects
Oh my god.
of the Prime Directive?
The fact that I even have to list something as favorite makes me feel dirty. I'm gonna say stat spread. The initial character creation before you get into every single table of dumb bullshit. Pick a race. Your race has these stats, and if you're a human, you have these stats and a couple bonuses.
You get 3 extra +1s.
Yeah, so you're, straight 3s, and then 3 of your stats are 4s. So, that's fine. But the initial stat spread I like because, again, having something that is point buy, you can easily game to try and be like, alright, I want to make sure I've got these specific things and just stat dump the other ones. And you also have the ability to, rolling for stats is just the worst idea because you just have random bullshit. So,
being brought back in Dungeons & Dragons Next, by the way.
Woo! Remember, stupid bullshit. Brought to you by D&D Next.
We'll do a whole podcast on D&D Next sometime. I'm a little drunk right now, but I'm confirming that is going to happen. Anyway.
So, the stat spread and then the static bonus from your initial selection of your service division. Okay, that is, from the very start, a decent beginning to a role-playing game.
Let me go ahead and roll through the 10 initial characteristics. Just say them out loud so we can see them. Because everyone's used to the ones from, like, Dungeons & Dragons, for example. You've got your 6 stats in Dungeons & Dragons. I think Exalted has 9. I think Palladium has 9. This game has 10. One more than Palladium. So here they are. Strength, accuracy, speed, leadership, logic, intuition, discipline, technical, general knowledge, and perception.
Yeah, I mean, you could really probably lose at least 2 stats off of that and be fine. But even then, I'm willing to say, because it's not an initial point buy, and because they'll just give you a fairly even stat spread, I don't feel too bad about having a lot of stats, because you will essentially normalize.
Sure. And I want to point out, by the way, that discipline is one of your stats, your ability to follow orders, to not react negatively to being disciplined, basically to be a good soldier. And one of the races, the Signans, who are brilliant technicians, get a starting 1 in their discipline stat. And it's difficult for them to raise it, and yet they are often serve on prime teams, which are supposed to be the best of the best of the best, cream of the crop, ultramarine type dudes.
Can I just interrupt one quick note?
Of course, I was done anyway.
Oh yeah, no. The other thing that is interesting to me is these prime teams have biker gang names.
Oh yeah, they did Black Eagles.
Yeah, you're like, what are you? We're the Black Eagles. We're the White Lightning. We're the Red Scorpions. I'm like, what are you, a fucking team on Legends of the Hidden Temple?
That's the other thing.
Get the fuck out of here.
It's always a color. Every one of them is some color, like they're all wearing the same shirt, and they probably have a tattoo that they have to hold all of their elbows together so you can see the whole tattoo. That's who these guys are.
Oh yeah, no, this takes the sort of very, almost stodgy Star Trek away team where it's like, okay, we're here to do some good, we're gonna be doing a thorough job of checking out the landscape, helping people if we can, whatnot, and instead replaces it with, like, fucking Hell's Angels as your team.
Munda gangs, yeah. And you know what? If I can interrupt your interruption, the reason why you play as a prime team and not as, like, the actual people on a starship you would give a shit about is because the book makes it a big point to point out that it's stupid that Riker was always going on away teams and shit.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh no, he's too important. He shouldn't be going on away teams. It should be the grunts of the, or the specialists of the ship. Whenever Kirk beamed down to a planet, that was bad discipline.
No, this game, super duper spurgy on just, this is how things should be, and by God, they will be my game.
This game hates its source material. It's like if you had a Conan role-playing game called Conan the Role-Playing Game. Conan is really gay.
So, what would you say is your favorite thing in this game?
You didn't say your least favorite yet. But
that's because both of our least favorite things is this goddamned fucking game.
Alright, that's absolutely reasonable. Okay, I already said my favorite thing about this game. At some point, they looked at the brink of the horror they were developing, and they pulled back. And that point is when they were designing combat. They said, okay, every single thing in this game has a tri-code of a 135 or a 257 or a 139 or some bullshit. And they were like, you know what? For combat, it's always a 468. It's always a 468. You know exactly what your moderate, medium, and good successes actually are. It's easy to remember, and I'm going to give it that. I gave it the one time they were like, you know what, we probably don't need a random weird number for every single roll you ever make.
Okay.
Now, my least favorite thing is that they immediately broke that by having 4 pages of damage modifiers.
Yeah.
Okay, so, last part of the podcast, same as always, John. Would you play this game?
If someone came up to me and said, hey, John, I want you to play in my Prime Directive game, I would probably slap that person as hard as I possibly could and ask what the fuck was wrong with them.
I have in my hands what fell out of the game when I purchased it. I bought this game for $10 at a local nerd store. And I say nerd store as a badge of pride and love, by the way. I love my nerd store. So, this is the Prime Directive Campaign Guidelines. Whoever purchased this game in 1993 with intent to play it printed these out, presumably on a typewriter, because of the type of paper this is. This is some onion skin. And I just want to quickly read through a couple of the high notes on this to give you an idea of the type of person who would play this game. Alright. Under Section 3, Subsection B. This Section 3 would have been Game System. So Subsection B. Character creation will be very similar to Prime Directive, with a few modifications to make it more of a Star Trek flavored effect. Use the Prime Directive creation system. Sorry, I'm going to go ahead and pronounce his misspellings. But leave the skills section blank until the GM can work with you to determine the appropriate skills, background, and rank. Okay, right off the bat, this game should be played by someone who does not trust their players under any circumstances. Okay, Section 4, Source Material. Only material from the actual TV shows, not TNG. I guess this guy liked the first season of DS9 a whole lot. Because that's what would have been out at that time. Will be considered official. No books, games, except Starfleet battles at my discretion. Or other materials will be grounds for what's real or realistic. This is primarily aimed at Dan.
God damn it, Dan.
Oh, Dan, always wanting to play as shit from Voyager. Which would come out 4 years later, sorry. So, the person who wrote this is a rank neck-bearded Spurglord. I can't see him. I've never met him. All the connection in the world I have to him is this slice of paper that fell out of his book that I now own, against my will. And I can describe to you the quality of his beard.
It is covered in the finest of hairs and oils.
And if it was rotated 30 degrees forward, it would be a real person beard. As it stands, it is a chin strap.
I think this game has caused me to lose grip on reality.
This game would be played by the sort of person that hates his players, that hates Star Trek,
and hates that his mom keeps interrupting him when he's trying to watch anime.
and above all fucking else, he cannot tolerate Dan. Fuck that guy. I wouldn't play this game under any circumstances, but I would play whatever Dan is currently playing. That is my answer. Now, you may join us next week when we review, actually 2 weeks from now, when we review whatever we're doing next. And we have a variety of options open to us. I think we may either be taking a crack at the D20 version of EverQuest, or, yeah, that's right, EverQuest, or we may be breaking into Horror-toberfest and reviewing a couple of role-playing horror games. We have a couple of good options. There's some things floating around in the ether. I'm particularly partial to Beyond the Supernatural. And I think John wants to take a crack at,
Orpheus.
Orpheus!
The White Wolf standalone game that only had 5 books ever, which, if you know anything about White Wolf, is real fucking weird.
We haven't dived into White Wolf yet. We've talked about it a little bit. I think that's probably because almost everything in White Wolf is still in print. Or it's impossible to find. I haven't priced Promethean recently, but I bet you it costs a fuck ton. So, tune in 2 weeks from now and check us out. As always, you can find us at our website, SystemMasteryPodcast.com, at the System Mastery page on Facebook, System Mastery on Twitter, or SystemMastery@gmail.com to send us your love letters, hate mail, or prospective campaigns for Prime Directive that you would like us to play in.
Dan.
Find us, Dan. You're our friend.
I'm so sorry, Dan.
I hope you found a better place. Like death. I recommend the death. Thank you, and good night.